Good Sunday to everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe. Helps us out, helps us do a little bit more with our YouTube channel as we continue to grow this thing out. Give everybody a minute to jump on, and then we'll start diving into the questions. As usual, I will do questions on the site and then kind of bounce back and forth on YouTube as well. All right, let's get started. Thanks everyone for joining me. It's Sunday night. We're going to do the Overreaction show. Trying to get back in the habit of doing this. So thanks for joining me. I'll start going through the questions on JOL first, and then go from there. If you're not a subscriber to Jacketsonline, I'd suggest and ask that you join us. It's the premier location for Georgia Tech fans online. So with that, let's jump into it. I think the topic du jour right now is the Jeff Collins hire at North Carolina as defensive coordinator. And I'm sure there's some questions about that. Just my thoughts on it is if you're Mac Brown and people know you're going to get fired, it limits your pool of people you can hire. It's not dissimilar to when, the last OC search prior to Jeff Collins getting fired, when Georgia Tech ended up with Chip Long. There weren't a bevy of people lining up to come be the offensive coordinator at Georgia Tech at that time either. If you're viewed as a somewhat lame duck situation, you're not going to be going from the best. Obviously, Patrick Suddas works there as in the AD office. I forget what his title is, but he's super tight with Jeff. Jeff has a pedigree as a good defensive coordinator. I guess we're going to find out now. They've been terrible on defense for 15 plus years, I think, since Butch Davis got fired. So we'll certainly see. I mean, he couldn't figure out how to coach his own defense to save his own job. So it makes me a little question what's going on, but we'll see. We're going to find out that dude can coach or not. But with that, I like Jeff. I wish him good luck. I think that ship is one of the most underachieving ships in all the college football under Mac Brown the last few years with all the talent they've had. And so it is what it is. So the first question is about if Jeff's bringing Thacker with him to North Carolina. I have no idea. Most of their defensive staff, I think, are guys who played for Mac Brown, like Dre Bly and Tommy Thigpen. So I'm not sure if those guys are going to be out. From what I've heard, and I can just tell you what I've heard. I'm not sitting there studying what's going on in North Carolina. I could really give a crap about them, except for the 1 week a year Georgia Tech plays them in football. But the word on the street in the grapevine was that a lot of the issues that North Carolina have defensively are revolving around their assistants and their ability to coach and develop players. Sound familiar to Tech fans? So I have no idea if they're going to hire people or what's going on. I really like Andrew. I think Andrew needs to get a different job working for someone else in the business to learn from other than Jeff. If I were Andrew Thacker's agent, that would be my advice to him, is to go build a different branch somewhere else with someone else. Also, are there any other rumored landing spots for unemployed guys on your list for us? Durkin, Zach Garnett, Santucci. So to explain something, that's my list of guys that I expected Brent to talk to. Now, what's turned out to happen is I think he's interviewed 3 people, seriously, and none of them have been on my list. So much for that. But it's because he's shooting for guys that actually have jobs. So it's been a little bit different than I expected. We'll see if it turns into some of those guys being in the mix. Durkin, I think, is in the mix for the Florida job with some other people. That's the same kind of situation as Mac Brown at Florida, where you have a lame duck coach more than likely in Billy Napier. And then, Zach Arnett's a weird guy. I wouldn't be shocked to see him go back out to the West Coast, maybe. Santucci, I don't know what's going on with him. Again, that gets into the thing that I don't know the answer to, which is, was he the beard for Mike Elko, or was he calling it? And I've looked and I can't find an answer. Duke football is not covered really that well. The main person that would cover them probably doesn't know the answer to that. So I don't know where that's going, but that's sort of where that is at. Tyson, all right. So I'll jump back and forth into the chat a little bit here. So the first thing I see is someone asking about Tyson Summers. Tyson Summers is friends with Brent Key. I think Brent Key has a lot of respect for him as a friend. I do not believe he would be hired or in consideration for the defensive coordinator job at Georgia Tech. No offense to Tyson Summers. Better chance of making the playoffs next year, GT or the Falcons? The Falcons almost made the playoffs this year, so I'll go Falcons there. When are they hiring a DC? I don't know. When Brent has a guy that he wants and that person accepts the job, it's a two-way street, right? Like this isn't like going down and hiring, a guy, as I said on the board one time, like to go manage a warehouse or to, be a bug zapper or whatever. Like you're going out and hiring a skilled person. So it's not the same thing that you just go out and expect people to take jobs. I had, for example, I took over our Alabama site and was hiring staff for that and got turned down by a couple of people, which was something I was not used to, but it has to do with the market and the jobs those people had and all that. So that's a different scenario than just hiring someone off the street, and that's what it is. Yes, it is a little bit of a power move to wear the Rose Bowl. I'll flex a hair. Actually, I was just wearing kind of like a crappy T-shirt, and this happened to be in my office. It was this or like a ratty hoodie that's dirty, so I went with the Rose Bowl sweatshirt. My wife actually had it on and had rolled up the sleeves because she likes to always wear my sweatshirts around the house when she's cold. They have not hired a DC. I think they're still looking at. Expectations to land anyone else from the portal this week. There are going to be one or two. The problem is you're sort of in the point now where you're up against numbers and you're trying to set depth for the spring. It's hard to get people into school in a tight window. So we're closing in on that window where someone can get into school or not. So I think it's mostly set. I think their focus is going to be a lot more on the second portal. That they would have had kids in visiting this weekend if they were trying to close more than like one or two people. There's one or two other guys. Someone said that Tyson Summers has been hired already. No, that would not be the case. Just like the guy who told me that he heard Zach Arnett was going to be hired when he hasn't been interviewed. Do you remember when spring dates and fall schedule dates are released? The football schedule is usually at the end of January, so like in maybe 23rd or 30th, something like that. It's usually like a Tuesday or Monday or something. Spring football, I don't know when they'll announce that. I'll probably find out a little bit ahead of time, but I'll have to sit on it because I tend to try to plan some travel and stuff. So someone was asking me, like, does anyone know who will be hired at this point? And I can just tell you who I know is not in the mix at this time. And if you remember, like, I shot down Buster a little bit at first when his name came up because he kind of, like, kept pushing for the job and worked his way and like, really, like, figured out how to ace other interviews and opportunities with Brent. And then that created a push and momentum for him to get the job. And so sometimes that can happen. I don't foresee that happening right now, but That's what's going on. What are the odds of getting an NFL DC to come to Georgia Tech? That one's very funny to me because like no one comes back to that. Like almost no one will come back from the NFL. The only guys who come back typically are trying to jumpstart their DC career, offensive coordinator careers. No one really wants to recruit kids, especially in this portal era with everything that's going on now in college football and how insane it is. People are even less likely to come back from the NFL right now. Like I know guys who are actively coordinators at other schools trying to jump up to the NFL to get the hell away from the portal right now. Big Daddy Buzz is correct, and that he knew one of the people like in the mix are, but like we had a discussion about it because there's something else going on that makes me a little bit. That's the guy that Big Daddy Buzz is talking about would be a domino hire. It requires other things to happen, which is why I've not put the name out there. I am not going to say on YouTube who my top 3 candidates are. I haven't put it on the board. I'm not putting it on YouTube for free. There are examples of guys who moved back, but I'm just telling you right now, the mood and the tenor of everyone I talk to is in the NFL is like to stay the hell away from the college game until they figure out this portal stuff. Like, and the job market is so shrunk down because guys are like on the reality is now, man, like coaches used to get 3 years. They're going to get 2 right now because of the portal, because people are investing their money. And so they feel like they have ownership at this point. Like it's not just crazy booster X, Y, and Z, the Yellowwood guy at Auburn or whatever. It's multiple guys like who are investing 6-7 figures into these things, and they feel like they have ownership and they're going to push and push and push if they're not getting the results they want. That's going to force really good coaches out of the game very quickly. How can I overact with how shitty the DC is higher until you tell us who it is? Exactly. I mean, here's the thing. Like, the DC could be anyone, and like, 99% of the time, like, we're not going to know. Like, did you guys know who Dave Patnode was, or Chip Long? Or I knew who Chip Long was, but like, I had heard of Buster Faulkner. Andrew Thacker. I had no idea who Andrew Thacker was. Nate Woody, didn't really know who Nate Woody was. I knew Nate Woody just because of a couple of the SIDs at Georgia Tech were at App State with him. But like a lot of these times, these guys are not going to be like a household name for one of us. Like the majority of the guys that Brent's going to talk to are not going to be people where you're going to be like, oh, John Tenuta or whatever. Like it's not going to click like that. Someone asked me about Marco Coleman. Well, considering Jess Simpson's a defensive line coach, I would say the odds are not great for Marco. Nothing's official, but read the tea leaves, man. And I don't think Marco's done a great job as a recruiter. I think he's been okay. Like he's been kind of hit and miss with it, and that's how it is with everybody. But he's not like the elite of the elite, and it's not. I like Marco, so I'm not trying to like crap on him, but the D-line recruiting the last 2 cycles has not been up to snuff, in my opinion, and it's not Marco. Someone asked me about UNC hiring Jeff and if Tech had any interest in him. That's very funny. Best guess, will Jess Simpson be our only D-line coach next year? What about our defense? Allowed BC to consistently drive the lane, and score? Or drive and kick out for an easy open 3. How do you fix that with the players we have? Do we ever play zone? All right, so this is a basketball question. So with basketball, I do think Damon is vehemently opposed to playing zone right now, and I think he's going to have to get over that a little bit. It's a very NBA philosophy, and I was talking to someone after a game about this, but in the NBA, you don't play any zone. You play man-to-man, or you trap or press. And so there's like a real anti-zone situation. And I think you have to mix it in and give teams different looks and stuff in college, especially when they're not there with the athletes to just walk down the court and play man to man every play. Why was that happening? Because guys are getting out of position. I would watch it and you'd see like a guard kind of come over and help and then start to drift from his man, or he'd drift to the middle and the guy would be open. Then you get a wide open three, or Post would kick it out. Post did a good job of facilitating. They totally shut him down, but he turned into facilitator because they kind of keyed on him, and then he just kicked the ball around to the open man. He did a good job of that. They've got to figure that out, but I mean, some of it's personnel and some of it's just, I think you need to make it a little easier on the kids and play a little bit of zone. But Kelly, in your take, you remind us that GT has a budget and a decent one, but it's still a budget. Is that a purpose of a statement to temper expectations regarding candidates like DJ Durkin now that other jobs are in play? DJ Durkin is unemployed and sitting in a house in Sarasota, Florida right now. Actually, no, for a fact, chilling. So no, like that's not who I'm talking about there. But they're not going to go pay Blake, whatever his name was, the guy who got hired from Missouri, $2.5 million. Can't pay your DC what your head coach makes. Can't pay your new DC like twice what Buster makes. Like you have to level up Buster. So there's like a lot of things that go into play here. They have a budget. It's better than it used to be. Is it like top tier? No, but they're on a budget just like any other business basically in the world, except for a handful of college football teams that are willing to spend obscenely. Of the names you've heard that have interviewed, will JOL think that DC is a splash hire if it's one of those guys? No, I don't. Brent's not a splash hire guy, man. Like, Brent's looking for guys who can coach ball and develop players and recruit and fit into the room. Like, those are his priorities. He's not looking for someone to win the press conference. That's the stuff the last guy did, and we saw how that turned out. Someone asked the Marco question, I already answered. Are there any former GT coaches on the search list for DC or DBC? Just a yes or no. Not that I'm aware of. Over under the budget's $1.5 million. I would imagine it's a little under that. I already answered the Marco thing. Which incoming freshman or redshirting freshman OL is likely to step up like the McKinney kid did? I'm going to take a break here. Gabe Fortson's one. You know, they've been very lucky, knock on wood here, about Weston Franklin and his ability to stay healthy at the center position. Brandon Galloway, prayers up to his dad that passed away. It's a real tragedy. But Benjamin Galloway, made some major strides at guard. They really like Patrick Screws, the backup tackle. Those are the three guys I would look at. I'd be a little more surprised to see like the Jamison Riggs, the Harrison Moore, or Tana play like a significant role as a true freshman, but I guess you never know. But yeah, the OL. So those are the ones I think. This is on paper the deepest OL I've covered here. Hoops question: acceptable, or is this all about the D coordinator shirt? Sure. I just felt like yesterday's game against BC was one that we had to have, although the refs sucked and some are overreacting and second guessing Damon's composure. Personally, I liked seeing him show some fire. How difficult will it be for the basket jackets to rebound? I agree with Damon. There's a lot of growing pains, but do you attribute the recent struggles to youth, talent, or a combination of both? It's a little of everything. They're not as good as you guys get really sucked into like how good you think they can be. And my point is always they are a tough shooting night away from being bad because you're leaning so hard on Dongo, who's such a raw piece of clay right now that's tremendously talented. And you got Tafari Gapare, who is basically Moses Wright as a true freshman. You have Kyle, who's, limited on defense. Debo's a little bit limited on defense, trying to play one-on-one basketball. And Miles Kelly, who is not moving the ball well. Like he shot better the last 2 games, but he's still not moving the ball well. He makes some poor decisions with the ball. This is not like a team built to go to the tournament. This is not a team that's built to finish in the top 8 in the ACC. What it is a team. This is a transition team, and they're very young at key spots. And Damon's trying to grow them. That's why he's playing Nate George, and why he's playing Bai, and why he's playing Sacco some. He's trying to get those guys some experience, so down the line it pays dividends. And I think people are putting unexpected pressure on it. I mean, they're going to upset people, and they're going to lose games like BC. And that's just how it's going to be, or Florida State. Like they could go in and beat Duke. They could go in and lose by 20 to Duke next weekend, a week from today, or a week from yesterday. Like that's just how this team is. It's young, and it's going to screw around a little bit. And the big thing that Damon's doing is he's trying to inject and increase the level of talent, which is the big thing you got to see there. And you want to see player development over the year. You're seeing Bai get better, more confident as the season goes on as well. And I think that's going to be huge. But, Damon's a big, and someone just asked about this in the chat, but Damon's a big advocate of not playing half-court sets. The guys really don't respond very well to when they do it. You can kind of see them processing it. And so, I don't know. I just think you guys got to give it some time. Follow-up budget question. You believe the DC budget should be able to confirm we're not a poverty program? And no, I didn't use that term to trigger you. Yeah, they have some money. It's not Clemson money. It's not Alabama money. But they're also not paying like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like a good example of someone that is cheap. I don't know, Pitt or someone. Like they're spending some money again. And that's part of why you hired Brent Key too, so you could spend money on that stuff. Someone asked me about the names not mentioned on the hot board. If I want to share the names, I'll share them. I've really been good at figuring out what's going on, and that's causing me actually a little bit of a problem because I am getting in a situation where I don't want to burn Brent and cause a bunch of issues for a guy that may get hired here. So I'm having to walk a real fine line right now, and it sort of sucks for you guys, and I apologize. I'm not able to give you like the hot board 2.0, 3.0, or whatever. I'm actually like too close to the information for that right now. And so if that shifts a little bit, or when I can start to share things, I will. It's just tricky right now. So sorry. What was the media chatter like during the BC post game? Also, I was hoping he was going to let it fly about the officials or the post game handshake, but I guess he cooled off before. Yeah, I was actually videotaping Damon Stoudemire about I thought he might choose to take the fine and go off about the lady and Sean Hull, who are both terrible in that game. And he took a really long time. Like he usually is up there pretty quickly. He gave probably a good 20, 30 minutes before he came up to talk to us. So he was definitely pissed. Definitely very pissed. And the media chatter there was no BC media. So it was just like Rod, myself, and a couple other people, and Chad. And we're all sort of shocked at how poor the officiating was across the board. Is Brent Key at the coaches convention right now? And how many people do you believe he's met with? I was told he's not going. That was as of earlier this week. I don't know if he went to Nashville or not. I haven't asked him. But I have not heard of him having plans to go to Nashville. Can Jess Simpson pull any transfers before spring without a DC being named? They don't really have spots, and I don't know if there's anyone they want to go pull right now. There's a second whole wave of the portal that you guys are not thinking about, which is when Tech got like Paul Mile and some other people over the years. There's the post-spring portal, and that's where Georgia Tech is going to see more movement. There's probably like 5 or 6 guys who are going to graduate in the spring that are staying to practice through the spring and then will leave. So you guys just got to kind of sit tight on the portal. The roster will end up shifting again after that next portal window. Has Brent passed on a DC candidate yet that is interviewed we would meet financial terms on and would have been a splash hire to most on the sport? No. Am I going to travel to Chapel Hill this week for the GT game for a press conference with Jeff Collins? How much of a bribe do we have to drum up to get you to rest Scooter as GC5 during the UNC week? So I get it. You're asking me if I'm going to go up there, like if they have Jeff available, like Tech Game Week, would I go up and interview him? Well, that'd be interesting. I don't know. It would be funny to call him I call him GC3 because of the 3 wins a year, but like, yeah, the GC5 thing's pretty funny. Why are Jim Leonard, Bill Clark, and Bud Foster not a head coach or DC right now? So qualified. Religious wishful thinking here. Jim Leonard sat out this year to get healthy, to get an NFL job, per some sources. Bill Clark, same thing. Bill Clark had some really serious health issues that he sat out for. Bud Foster's like retired and had some personal problems, as I understand it. And he might be, is Bud 70 now? Like, he looks like he's 70. No offense, Bud, but what's Bud Foster these days? 64. Yeah, I mean, Bud hadn't coached college football in almost 5 years now. So I would not hold my breath on Bud, but Bud kind of missed his window to be a head coach for whatever reason. I think there were some extenuating circumstances there, as I understand it. I'll go back through the chat now. When do you think we'll have a DC hired by? Everyone likes to ask that, and I pointed to the fact that Nick Saban didn't hire his until February. He didn't hire either of his coordinators till February after signing day. And there were several other schools that did that as well. I feel like Miami did that last year. Not that, like, I don't think it'll go like that, but I'm just saying, like, there's the timetables in all of the posters' minds on JOL, right? Like, and optimal situations, which, you know, Russell talks about or I talk about. Like, ideally, you would like to have the person hired and have it done and blah, 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 blah. But the reality is you just need someone to have enough time to be ready to go in the spring. So unless you're going to blow up your whole system and put something weird in, it doesn't matter as much to me. Can you name any DB coaches to possibly look at? No, because I think, it was funny. We got into it with Kent Jack a little bit, but I do think I think if you're going to hire a new DC, you do want that person to have some input on some of the hires. And if you're going to throw Jess on them, you're going to want them to have some, at least be in the interviews to talk. Do I think Thacker will follow the Minister of BS to North Carolina? I don't know. I hope Thacker gets another job on the field somewhere else. Like, I think that would be best for him. Have I been interviewed? No, unfortunately not. Ted Roof for DC. I enjoyed that. I may or may not have sent that to someone as a joke. Key got a taste of winning with O'Leary and winning big with Saban. I feel like he won't be satisfied until he beats UGA, wins ACC, and gets the GT in the playoffs. I agree with all of those things. I think that's where Brent's goals are. He wants to make Georgia Tech for all of the things that Jeff Collins said over and over again to us, right? Like his goals for Georgia Tech and all this. Brent actually believes those things and wants those things to happen and cares deeply that they happen. And so that's sort of the juxtaposition there. Demetrius Knight to South Carolina surprise. No, they spent money on really interesting players. I like D Knight. He had a decent year at Charlotte. Yeah. And, same kind of thing. Made some big plays, had a couple games that weren't as great. A little inconsistent week to week, but ended up as one of the all-conference defensive players and parlayed that into a shot at South Carolina. I hope he does well. Him and Kyle Kennard are now there. It was interesting. I talked to some buddies at Florida State about Kennard, and they had pretty strong opinions about him that kind of lined up with what I've said. Just you haven't seen the consistent production game to game from him over his career yet. It's kind of been feast or famine with him. Can someone coach that out of him and make him a down to down guy? That would be real interesting. Blaylock was hurt in the bowl game. TV said he played all season with it. Is it serious? He's not on the roster as coming back, so I assume that he's done. It sounded like he was done. They pulled him off the roster, so I assume. I haven't bothered to actually confirm that one because I just assumed he was done when they pulled him off the roster. Baez a freaking stud. Yep, he absolutely is. And George, too, he's a little turnover prone. Yeah, Nate George should be in high school right now. So, like, you got to remember that. I thought that there were two things that Nate George did that really impressed the crap out of me in that BC game there in the first half. He drove in the lane a couple times and bounced past the ball into Bye for buckets. And it was just a really heady play. Like, if you do anything else there, he probably turns the ball over. If you bounce past, you give him enough time to catch the ball and make his move up in one solid move versus trying to catch a ball and, you know, having to catch the ball with some speed on it from a normal pass or a chest pass. So it's been interesting to see the guard play. I mean, Kyle Sturdivant was an assist away from a triple-double. If Miles doesn't fumble one of those ball when they're trying to make the comeback bet at the end and gets the layup, Kyle Sturdivant had a triple-double in that game with that. And he was one assist short. So it's been interesting to see. What is the latest date you see keep making the announcement of a defensive coaching staff? Basically, we have to have a staff in by – the staff was complete when was Ricky hired? Mid-February? You don't have to have – there's no – y'all are like real caught up in the idea that you have to have X, Y, or Z happen. They have enough people on the staff to cover for whatever is going on. He could go into May without a coach if he really wanted to, but with missing a spot on somewhere on staff. You remember Jason Seymour, Boogie, left because Miami hired the Marshall DC, and then that caused Brent to hire Ricky to replace Boogie. So that was like after signing day, sometime in February, I think. So, yeah, it can go on and on and on. If you're so close to the info, then just tell the people. I can't, man. Like, that's how I get all the other info. It's a trade. I'm trading off being able to hopefully break the story and do all this other stuff and set myself up well to get other information that you guys appreciate by being mindful of not burning people right now. So it's a trade-off, and it sucks. I don't love doing it that way, but it is the one weird thing that goes on with this. I'll put this up so you guys can see this one. Yes, I would think there's still the possibility that guys circle around on. There were guys that he circled around on the OC search. All right, so question about the what were my thoughts on the Rose Bowl? I thought it was amazing. So I've been to the Orange Bowl. I went to the Sugar Bowl when it was here. I went to – what other big bowl games have I been to? Obviously, the Peach Bowl. I've been to the Peach Bowl when it was like a big game. That might be it. Like some other lesser bowls covering Georgia and Georgia Tech. It was just really cool. The setting was beautiful. Other than maybe BYU Stadium, it was my favorite kind of backdrop for a game. With the hills and Pasadena and all that. And then just the kind of pageantry of the bowl. The bowl people were super cool running it. They had these massage loungers in like our media lounge area where we would eat and get drinks and stuff. They had those like massage chairs from like Brookstones or what's the other place called that was like Brookstones. They had like airports, whatever. Anyways, they had that stuff. Food was good. Drinks were good. Environment was cool. It was just a fun experience. And I went because it was like a once in a lifetime thing, man. Like I had the opportunity to go cover a college football playoff game. I have no idea if that'll ever happen again. Hopefully, especially with an expanded playoff. But those may be on both. Those could be at schools and in the first round or whatever. So you just don't know, like, if you're ever going to get that experience, and if the bowl system's even going to exist the way it does right now in the future. Then the other one was the perception of Georgia Tech in California. They didn't come up a lot. There were a couple of Georgia Tech people on my flight to the OC. I flew into Orange County to John Wayne Airport in Santa Ana. And there were a couple tech people in tech gear on those flights, but wasn't a huge amount. I know there's a lot of people that like Georgia Tech in the area. They have there's a lot of Georgia Tech ties in California. There's a lot of people who subscribe to the site that are based there as well. So it is a positive one. Would you say the Middle Tennessee offensive lineman is penciled in at right guard? What does his film look like? He's a mauler, Keelan Rutledge. Yes, he's the starting right guard if they play tomorrow. Well, I mean, I guess if they play tomorrow, maybe not, because he'd have to learn the offense. But you know what I mean. He's a big mauler. They took him in to be the replacement for Connor Scaglione. You get 2 years out of Big Red, which is a benefit there as a junior. And he gives you some nice, kind of variation there. Gives you a little more time to bring up the Benjamin Galloways of the world and bring those guys along, or Harrison Moore, whoever at guard. And it allows you to keep Jordan Williams at right tackle. So big pickup. I'm very excited to see him. Would Jason Seymour get an interview for DC? I said this on the board. I feel like Boogie is 2 years away from this job. He's had 1 year at Marshall. They were not great on defense. He was one of the few guys retained on the staff. Jason's a super sharp guy. I just don't think he's ready to be a P5 coordinator right now. I think he needs a little more seasoning. I know Brent's very high on him. I'm sure Brent will have a conversation with him just like he did with Kevin Shearer or whoever else. But I think he's going to go find like a slightly more experienced DC. I'm sure Brent is really trying to make sure he gets the right guy and certainly earned my trust. He's very thoughtful about constructing this program. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with Brent. He is really trying to build this brick by brick, right, and have a solid foundation. I think what you saw with Jeff was he built like the flashy design elements of things, like the finishings, and then the core of the program was kind of rotten and wasn't a stable base. It was sort of like a Jenga tower with all the pieces pulled out of the bottom. And so Brent's trying to build this thing, like an engineer would. And he is slow to hire, quick to fire. I mean, he's pulled the trigger already on quite a few people. If he doesn't think you're carrying your weight, if you're dead weight to him, or if it's not the guy, if it's not working for whatever reason, Brent's going to pull the plug. And I appreciate that as a guy who manages people and expectations on a daily basis. I understand it. Something I struggle with actually is being, kind of a hard ass boss and pulling the trigger sometimes when I need to get rid of people. Not talking about Russell here, by the way, but with other people who work for me. And so, that's something that's interesting. Sharper image, that is correct, Justin. That is the thing I couldn't think of. Sharper image, also a mall staple. Finally, what about Saeed at Saeed, right? It's not Saeed, right? Saeed Gibbs, redshirt sophomore corner. I think his film looks pretty good. He's a talented corner. I think him and Amari Harvey and Rodney Shelley kind of mix together well. It'll be interesting to see what they do with Warren Burrell, how he fits into it. The kid from Tennessee who's played a lot as well. They have some options. Then DJ Moore's, a freaky athlete. So does he take the corner? They're planning to keep him there, at least as far as I know for now. So it'll be a very different cornerback room from a year ago. Basically, 3 of the top guys are all gone now. And you got Amari, who's an emerging talent back there, and then Rodney, who showed a couple signs needs to figure it out a little more. And the interesting thing with Shelley, too, is he can play nickel. So I'm curious what they do there, because they'll be resetting that. I actually liked Omar Daniels a lot when they played him last year at corner in games. I think he brings you a little something, a little swag out there. Realistically, with the talent that we have now, and we may or may not be able to pull in the second portal, how far could we move up in total defense from 110 or whatever we finished? I think the goal is if you get in the top 60, you're going to win. If you get in the top 60 and you have the same offense, like similar offensive production, you would be an 8-9 win team with that. You just got to be able to win games with defense, and that didn't really happen a lot this past year. That was more of a hallmark of Brett's first year, and the offense was so far behind, and then it did a total like 180. That's why, I think Andrew Thacker got the job. As I talked about a year ago, Brent interviewed a bunch of DCs and was very close to making a change there, and decided he liked Andrew and was going to give him a shot at it, and it didn't work out, and he was quick to make that decision to change that in the middle of the season. And I think that was probably part of why I brought Scherer in as well. And it's just going to be a different animal now. And so what you hope is they become maybe half as good if they jump, 40 spots or whatever and are in the 70s, like just not terrible, right? Like you just need to be able to get off the field on third down, not give up third and longs, get some sacks, not be gashed so badly by quarterbacks. I think those are the big things right now. So I say all that, and it's going to be interesting to see. I'm very curious to see who they hire as DC and how the rest of the staff fills out. Who was the non-Thacker choice at DC last season? Oh, I guess you're asking me like who else they interviewed. I never got that far into that because I felt like they were going to hire Andrew from the jump. I don't really know who he interviewed. I never got into that much. Scenario: King cuts turnovers in half, defense top 50, rushing attack is the same. Is GT in the ACC championship game? Possibly. Depends on the strength of schedule piece. They play a tough schedule. Is it going to be a tough schedule? That's one of those things we talk about all the time. Like the teams that we thought maybe were going to be really good this year weren't at times, and then some were, and some were better. Like Ole Miss, I thought was going to take a step back and took a step up. Or like Pitt and some of the other teams that sucked that Georgia Tech didn't play, or like Virginia being a little bit better than I thought they would be, or Boston College maybe being a little bit worse. Like those are the things that are hard to figure out. David, I'm not going to answer your question because I'm friends with that kid and he's a sweet guy. I think he's a little misguided some things. That's all. All right, folks, appreciate it. My wife would like me to spend some time with her since her child actually went to bed at a normal time tonight. We'll see. Oh, I'll answer this one last question. All right. Someone asked about DJU, transfer to FSU. I don't know. I think his ceiling's lower than George Travis's based on everything I've seen. And I think he's a stopgap for them. So I don't know how good DJU is going to be. They were really dominant at Oregon State. I watched them quite a few times on TV late at night. And they just kind of played bully ball. And I don't know if Florida State's going to do that. So we don't know who Florida State's full roster is yet either, and they don't know. Nor do we know Georgia Tech's full roster is at this point. So it's one of those weird things. It's hard to gauge. It's like if you gave me the schedule tomorrow, I couldn't tell you like what to expect because I don't know who's on the teams yet. But all right, folks, we'll be back next week. Thank you for your time, and make sure you like, comment, subscribe to Jackets Online. Subscribe to our YouTube page. It's free. And follow us on social media. Mine's right there on the right there. So thanks, everybody. Good night.